and how shame can really challenge our ability to connect. And so, just a little bit about shame. What is shame? Shame is going to be a very visceral, like in the body experience. It's something that we really feel in the body. And shame is often a sense of self that as a flawed, defective, weak self. Like it is just this I am bad, I am a mistake, I am. When we look at shame, it often puts us in a place of wanting to hide. It often silences us. It really breeds in isolation. And so what can happen is we become very defensive. We might become, reject others or become critical of others, all in an effort to kind of hide ourselves from being seen in a certain light that we don't want to see, that could feel very shameful. And so, a lot of horrific acts, a lot of rage comes from it, a lot of violence, a lot of crime is often coming from a place of shame. And, shame is not to be confused with guilt, so they are different. When you kind of look at shame, you're looking at it as I am bad, right? It is that I, the self is bad, self is flawed. And, we often find ourselves wanting to hide or feeling ashamed. It breeds in isolation, as I mentioned. And it really focuses on the self, like you are alone in your shame. Versus guilt is gonna have more of, I made a mistake. Like it's a behavior versus associated with like self thing. Like it's not self, like you made a mistake, something happened. And you're able to then repair it by fixing, apologizing to someone, right? It's like more like the behavior is the issue versus you as the issue. And that is kind of when you think about shame versus guilt. Guilt is more of a action I've done versus shame is I am the mistake. And so what I found so important when we think about shame is, I'm going to read you a quote about it. So shame says this, right? Each human emotion is a directional compass with a true north derived from evolution. The true north for shame is conformity. And what it means by that is shame is often in an effort to stay in connection with others. And if you kind of think about it, we are pack animals. At the end of the day, humans are pack animals. We want to be a part of the pack. And if something is causing us to threaten our connection, life or death is the most scary thing that could potentially happen for us. Especially because this is something that happens. Shame is often created more from history or our historical experiences with maybe caregivers, with people that we grew up with. It's a relational experience. So we all have the ability we have the capacity to tolerate shame, but what ends up happening is how it is responded to by our caregivers. And so let's say, let's keep in mind the idea that shame is an effort to stay in connection. So let's say you are crying. You're crying, right? And your caregiver, maybe they're having a bad day, maybe they don't have the tolerance, they weren't allowed to cry themselves, and they're like, you cannot cry, stop crying! And so they would go, okay, so you learn that is not okay. So that happens, you get in trouble. And what actually creates the shame is not the initial rupture where they're like, you can't cry. It is then the lack of repair. So let's say that happens, and then the caregiver's like, kind of calms down, comes back, I'm really sorry, I reacted like that. I'm sorry. How are you doing? Are you okay? That's not going to create the shame. Like, okay, rupture happened, you can move on. Crying is not this deemed as bad behavior, it's bad, you're bad, right? It is when you were told consistently, stop crying, stop crying, stop crying, stop crying. And there's no there's no repair. There's no repair. That is when the shame is then created.
So then you create like this association in your mind, when this happens, and that means there's something wrong with me.
Exactly. And remember, it is a way of staying in connection. So if you learn your mom or your dad or whomever is your caregiver is not going to then pay attention to take care of you as a child, again, that is life or death. You need to be cared for. So you learn there's something wrong with you. You stop crying. It's not okay to cry. And you basically keep it as far away as possible so you can stay in connection. And that ends up being confirmed over and over in all of our moving forward in our other interactions.
And you don't trust others to take care of you, you have to take care of yourself, and then you don't communicate your needs.
Exactly, because it wasn't safe to do so.
Right.
And, you know, and again, the idea that shame breeds in isolation is that it becomes this internal place of like, you are too needy, you are too much, all those kind of like language that shame can mask itself in is an effort so that you can stay in connection, right? Because if a part of you wants to be in relationship with someone but fears that your needs are too much, you're gonna obviously not you want to stay in connection. So you're like, I don't have needs, I'm okay, I'm self-reliant. Versus like, let's say you are having a hard time, and it may be really scary, totally threatening the relationship, you have to open up to that, because that could lead to them rejecting you. So, especially if that was your initial experience, and then all those networks, all confirming experiences historically confirm you should not have needs. But why connection is so important is because it is the antidote. Now, historically, you learn it's not okay, and then that kind of like creates the lens of all these behaviors that you've learned are shameful. You learn these are bad, right? And that's the lens you start to take on your life, and then kind of create the confirming experiences. See, look at someone left me when I had a need, right? And therefore, you confirm that going on into your other relationships. And so, it kind of keeps manifesting, you keep being in with your shame. But shame is a relational wound. It happens in relationships, so it's healed in relationships. And not all relationships. Remember, if you go to the person who hurt you, they're going to hurt you again. Because unless they've done the work, they're not really going to be able to help you. And that's the thing. So we have to be mindful. Not all connection is the safe connection, and that's absolutely fair, right? You will have to have that shame is never the same connection, right? So if you need to be stoic and not have any emotion with family, then it is probably the safest bet. But what we want to challenge is that not all relationships have to like look that way. It can be within new friendships, it can be within safe relationships, it can be with maybe a professor, whomever has build that trust slowly.
You have to recreate that point of reference by creating positive experiences that you can reflect back on, as opposed to constantly reflecting back at those negative experiences. And those people are gonna perpetuate those same experiences from reoccurring, triggering each other.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly that. And so the more you create new disconfirming experiences with new people, where you act, they're like, oh, I love when you should, like, oh, that, you know, I felt that same way. Then the antidote is the antidote to shame, that you say, okay, you're right, I can be vulnerable, right? And it starts to allow you to feel more safe with vulnerability, because you realize that actually can be connection based. And also, again, it's funny, one of the biggest parts of it is also humor. Humor really is such a important aspect of all this healing. It is the ability to have safe connection, share, be able to laugh with someone who feels safe, you know, or in general laugh. And let me see, is there anything else?